Hey everybody, Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick update on my experience with the Microsoft Surface 3. Priced at $499, the 64 gig model that we're looking at today is the least expensive offering. It does replace the Windows RT second generation tablet from Microsoft. That was an attempt that for 2 years really was aimed at Microsoft trying to get into the mobile OS business in a tablet form, of course using the Surface brand. But here in the third generation, they really did things right. They corrected all of their mistakes, listened to consumers, and in my opinion, made a knockout product. So if you're wondering right now whether or not this is worth the price of admission at $499, absolutely. In fact, it kills just about every other tablet on the market, Apple, Android, or otherwise. Of course, some consumers will still prefer a more lightweight option to this because they won't necessarily need a full-blown operating system. But considering we're now at a $499 price point that really is incredibly more powerful than anything else that it competes with in terms of its full spectrum of capability and use, especially when you take into account the optional accessories like the pen and the type cover, you're just in a whole nother league of functionality than any other $500 tablet, especially with this sort of build quality and coming from a reputable, if not one of the best manufacturers out there, even though they're limited in their experience. So let's talk about what you're getting. I mentioned the 64 gigs of internal storage. You've also got 2 gigs of RAM. Of course, if you step up for 100 to 600 US, 128, 4 gigs of RAM. But the exact same Intel quad-core Atom processor driving this, which actually has been able to pull off roughly 10 hours of battery life in my use so far. The display, brilliant. You've got a 10.8-inch 3:2 aspect ratio with 920 by 1280 resolution, which so far has been a pleasure to use. Now, as I mentioned, some people will still prefer a traditional mobile OS based tablet because it'll be a little bit lighter. This is 1.37 pounds, not incredibly light, but the kickstand that's integrated here really does make a big difference in my opinion. And when it comes to everyday tasks, whether you're a student, a professional, whatever it may be, this far outclasses, meaning the full Windows 8.1 64-bit experience, anything you could get in the mobile world. Of course, the first splash page, I'm nowhere near my router, by the way. Bluetooth 4.0 on board, a whole host of different radios and accelerometers, as you would expect with every generation of the Surface. No real improvements there, but this one is all about the design. We still have the design we saw with the last gen Surface RT, which was a revamp, and really lending a lot from the Surface Pro 3 lineup, which is great because it is clear and I would say far and away the biggest success within the Surface family, and this just benefits from it in every possible way. Whether we're talking about the pen and its OneNote capability, which, by the way, the pen does work from both. This is compatible when it comes to the type covers with all previous generations, but functionality is limited. For example, the power cover will not work with this. It will work as a keyboard, but it will not act as a secondary battery. But the good news is 10 hours of battery life kind of solves that out of the box. And again, in a form factor that you will be hard-pressed to challenge from any other manufacturer with this build quality and reputation. This is about as reference as hardware truly gets at the end of the day. Web browsing has been seamless, fantastic. Audio quality from the speakers also surprisingly good. And these are the type of things I would look for on a tablet that really also is a laptop. Now, keep in mind, when I say laptop, it's more of a netbook in terms of we are being driven by an Atom processor. So certain expectations have to be, said or accommodated, realized when you pick up something like this in either configuration, the $500 or $600 option, because at the end of the day, the limitations of the Atom processor are still going to be felt. So if you are a power user, if you need something more, the Surface Pro 3 is still the better option, or waiting for the Surface Pro 4. Keep in mind that'll also be shaped, though, by what you're comfortable with in terms of budget, clearly, far and away, the less expensive and better overall compromise for just about every consumer on the planet, especially students, anyone that's budget-minded, I would say, because you're really not making a huge sacrifice. But if you have software that is more intensive, then you really do need to step up to the Pro 3 line. Now, Microsoft has been arguing that the Pro 3 line, at least the i3 model, which is the least expensive, $799 retail, is so close in performance to this model at $499, forget the $599 upgrade, they claim up to 80% of the performance of the i3 Pro using this. Now, that's based on benchmarking. In my experience, though, the trade-off in terms of getting battery life here that does surpass or at least comes out evenly with the Pro 3 already is amazing at the lower price point. And many, I think, will believe that the portability of this is a benefit because not everyone needs the 12-inch display with the extra resolution that you're getting with the Surface Pro 3. Otherwise, this tablet, believe it or not, is the better overall package, besides being the lower price point when it comes to the fact that it actually charges from micro USB. But there is a caveat with that, which I'm going to get into right now. So here on the right-hand side of the tablet, we have all of our ports. You can see the headphone microphone jack right there. We've got the micro USB charging port, as well as a full-size USB port, and last but not least, mini display port. Now, this is a great basically array, I would say, on one side of this industrial slate of goodness, because it really is everything that every user could possibly want on a mobile hybrid device, especially one that can double as a computer, which this can do easily. It is, and that's the beauty of this. And we don't have the battery life drawback traditionally associated with Windows 8.1 in its full glory. In addition to that, expandable storage, you all know about this already. This is not a new feature. Right there, we've got a micro SD card slot. So if you have something like this laying around, much like myself, a little 128 gig card, really easy and getting very inexpensive to add storage. Spring activated, you're not going to break your nails basically removing the card like some other options out there. And I think that's part of what happened here. Not only did Microsoft lend itself, use the Surface Pro 3 as a benchmark for making this a winner product, which they did in a smaller form factor. If anything, this is the baby brother or sister, I'm not trying to make it gender specific here, to the Surface Pro 3, its elder sibling. And in making it, they gave it every benefit and then some, but a clear preview of what we're to expect with the Surface Pro 4, that things are only going to be more impressive because if they did this all at a $500 and $600 price point, I'm very interested to see what they're going to do at price points that range all the way up to almost $2,000. I've been waiting for, I won't say a desktop class processor to make its way here, but certainly something beefier than the lower voltage, more power-friendly chips. But of course, an unrealistic compromise when you're trying to sell tablets that double as laptops. A lot of people complain that there's no included type cover. I still think that's a ridiculous complaint. Show me another tablet that includes one. And this far outclasses, even without the type cover or the optional pen at $49.99, any tablet that $500 can buy presently. Build quality, functionality, internals, there's nothing else out there. Granted, the Galaxy Tab S still has the best looking and highest res Super AMOLED that you're going to find, which differentiates it from the pack, but it does not differentiate it in the way that this does. I mean, think about commercial applications, not just students, businesses. This is going to be a gold mine for Microsoft for just about every area you could think of. Restaurants, small businesses, any place that's using an iPad now is going to want to use one of these, especially now that they're the exact same price. The kickstand I wanted to show you here, we do have 3 different positions. Another thing, Microsoft Learning. So you can actually take this all the way around, so you're not limited. And this is something they only learned in incremental steps, oddly enough, from generation to generation. And there you can see it in action right there. And so that's as low as we can go, but still, it really does make for great hands-free use. And web browsing, as I mentioned before on here, is fantastic. And I said before, I'm not anywhere near the router. And didn't mean to go back there. But you will see, if I was using Chrome, the experience would be different. That's why I want to stick to reference here so that you can all see what the speed is like. And you can see it's just zipping through things for the most part. Or at least it was until I said that. It figures this is the way things work. Alex Rodriguez, fantastic. But what you can see here is that you are getting a tablet, 10.8-inch display, great clear type quality. Again, build quality, fantastic. And then to boot, you also have things I haven't mentioned, like the 3.5 megapixel front-facing camera and the 8 megapixel camera on the back, which are clear upgrades from the previous generation at this price point. So there's really nothing about this that hasn't been an improvement for the consumer at the most base level as well as the most intricate, compared to the previous gen of this price point, this tablet and offering from Microsoft. So it's not just that they abandoned the OS or that they modified the design and brought us more functionality, charging from micro USB, although I'm going to get there. It's not a perfect thing. It's an upgrade on every level. Higher res screen, larger display, full-blown operating system. I mean, if there was ever a time that a company decided that at $500 they were going to give us a gift rather than just another recycled piece of junk, this is it. And this is a rare thing in the business. So I wouldn't say it's a big gamble for Microsoft. It could cannibalize much of the i3 version of the Surface Pro 3, because I think a lot of people will be inclined to save the money and go this route unless they actually require more power, which in that case I would say you should probably go for the i5 now that this exists. When the i3 existed, it was the only inexpensive route to Surface Pro 3 performance. Granted, a slightly reduced level of performance, but still something I would think is more than enough for the average, if not even not advanced, but person that recognizes what an i3 plus 4 gigs of RAM is really capable of. Storage expansion, I mentioned, really easy to do with that micro SD card slot option. And then as far as the pen input, if you do actually require that with OneNote, again, you're reaping all the rewards and benefits of the Surface Pro 3, which simply did not exist in the previous gen. Predominantly, I'm talking about the ability to quickly open OneNote with a simple click, and OneNote really becoming part of the character and identity of this tablet computer hybrid in a way that it just wasn't marketed well enough in Gen 1 and Gen 2. And there are so many other things that this device can do. I mean, Windows 8.1 is a pretty rich platform. You're going to get Windows 10 in the summer, so that's another nice thing to know in terms of value. You also have Office 365, a one-year subscription out of the box, which is something that Microsoft wasn't doing with Surface Pro 3 ever, but they were including with the Surface tablets, so that's why we're still getting it here. That's a natural progression, even though now we have a full-blown operating system. So this really does challenge, I think, many of Microsoft's OEMs, which puts them in an awkward position. No one has a product as good as this. Some of you have mentioned different ones in the comments. And while many of them are competent and have been on the market for a while and they'll get revamped, they're still not going to live up to this product because this is going to be manufactured at such a high rate that eventually it's going to see price drops that, again, competitors simply won't be able to live up to. If you've seen how Microsoft products that haven't done well, aka Surface 1, 2, both in the Pro version as well as RT World, those things got incredibly discounted. I expect the same will happen here, even though this is going to be received very well. In terms of the top of the tablet, you've got your power button and volume rocker. There's that 8-megapixel camera, microphones. This is great for Skype. I mean, you're really not going to find a weakness on this tablet other than the limitations of what the Intel quad-core Atom processor is capable of. And that's what keeps the Pro series completely well and alive in its form right now. The Pro 4 is going to definitely diminish that value, not take anything away from this. But this is a tablet that I have to believe Microsoft didn't want to make in the first go-round, simply because they thought that they could do more than just make another Windows-based tablet, which is what the Pro line was all about. They wanted to make something that could compete directly with Android and Apple. And with time, again, success, failure, reading the market, seeing what consumers wanted, we finally ended up with what I think the majority of you were after, which is a competent, very lightweight, sleek profile, styling is nice, great build quality solution that does give you the best of both worlds between the battery life, media consumption, because what can't you do with this? I mean, someone who says, oh, I need to keep my iPad. This is a PC, so this could actually run your iPad. I mean, that speaks to the order of things here. So anyone who compares this to an iPad, I don't know how to help you. Brand loyalty is one thing, and I understand it. Don't worry. It's not that I don't. This is more a matter of simple common sense, that this isn't about what you prefer in terms of operating systems anymore, because this is not comparable to a mobile OS. You're actually getting a computer. And I have to tell you, Apple couldn't be farther from delivering a product like this. They still have not even made a Pro version of the iPad, which I think analysts have been expecting for a couple of years now, let alone a larger iPad, which would be a no-brainer for them. But to even contemplate that they would make the iPad actually capable of running the full version of any version, I should say, of their operating system in the desktop class is a complete taboo that would cannibalize their very limited market spectrum of products. Of course, not limited market share. We know how well Apple does. I wouldn't take that away from them in a moment. But when you look at what money can buy these days, Microsoft has created a new standard, and that's not something that they were known for. You used to have to look to lesser-known OEMs, ones that didn't have the sort of reputation and clout that Microsoft had in order to push the envelope. In fact, I feel like Microsoft saw that so many products were coming out of China that had these sort of specs, a full USB 3.0 port. You had micro SD card slot for storage expansion, charging via micro USB. I mean, even the Micro Center branded tablet, the Winbook, that thing could charge from micro USB. So there's no question they realized that if no-name companies could make stuff like this, they could do it in a much higher quality form with a higher price tag that consumers would easily justify, not only because of brand and overall quality recognition from Microsoft, but because, again, this is reference hardware. So I really like this tablet, if that's not incredibly clear. In terms of the actual application store, I'm still not a fan of it. I personally would exclusively be using a tablet like this with Windows 8.1 in the desktop mode. And that speaks a lot to me never caring for RT and the entire tablet environment. Again, I clearly understand why Microsoft wanted to go after it. The problem was they were too late to the dance, and product adoption suffered severely. So this is the response. You make a great tablet, great price, no corners cut except for the processor, which arguably isn't a cut corner because it can do everything that any tablet can and then some, since it is still driving that full OS. One note about the micro USB charging. While it sounds like a great specification on paper, great idea, the reality is that unless you're using the supplied charger, the charge time is going to be incredibly slow. From what I've seen, you're looking at 4 to 5 hours to charge this fully, but that's again to get roughly 10 hours of battery life, which is great. If you're using your phone charger, it has to be connected to a main, a wall outlet. You're not going to be able to use a car adapter, at least in my experience, or anything else. So you need as much power as possible, and it is beyond a trickle charge, folks. We're talking about, I'm not going to say exactly 1% per hour, but it's absurd. So it's literally more about proving that it can be powered from it, but you do still need to rely on the power brick that's included. The good news is that the power brick is incredibly small. So if there was ever a time that you were going to be relegated to working with an included power brick, the one that comes with this is a blessing. And every other generation of the Surface, as we know, was charged basically down here at the keyboard connection site, or basically used, I should say, pogo connections like this to charge on the side. They realized that that was a way to just easily scratch the Surface. So that's been abandoned, and I anticipate we're going to see the same in the Surface Pro 4, but I could be completely wrong about that. So far, really not disappointed in any way other than the fact that the micro USB is really more about marketing than it is true universal use. I think we're going to need to wait for USB 3.1 next year, and probably the revision of this product to get that great benefit of fast charging as well as data rates off the charts, and even video output, among many other benefits. And also not having to worry which way the orientation of the plug is. But overall, right now, from what I've seen, there's really nothing to dislike about this tablet. Simply no complaints at the $499 price. If you step up to $599, I would only be wary because I do think Surface Pro 3 is going to continue to come down in price. And unless you're really against moving beyond this form factor, which you might be because the Surface Pro 3 is considerably larger and heavier, even though it's just about the exact same thickness, for those of you wondering, more flexibility with the kickstand, you do end up here with just a package, again, that is unmatched by anyone right now, and for the, I would say, long-term foreseeable future. And that's not that things aren't on their way out. I just don't see them being as good a product as what I'm seeing here. And basically every review out there concurs on this, that Microsoft has made the Surface that everybody wishes had come out on day one. No mobile websites here, no BS. And that's what I like about this. Yes, a little bit heavier. Again, going beyond a pound does put it in a different class, but it does have a larger display than a lot of those tablets it's competing with, not by much. I mean, the Galaxy Tab S, I don't want to even do a comparison, even though many of you may ask for it, because pricing is still similar. And that's, again, what makes the Surface 3 so unique, is that for the first time, we've got something that shouldn't be in the comparison conversation that must be because of pricing, even though this far and away, even in the 64 gig, 2 gig RAM configuration, still trounces, pounces, whatever word you want to use, basically everything that you could possibly consider. So unless you simply hate Microsoft, you have absolutely no good reason to at least pick one of these up, try it out from a consumer or Microsoft store is my recommendation, Amazon, that is reliable. Of course, I'll include a link in the description. Give it a shot, because even with the added accessories, you're ending up with a product that is far and above anything in its class. And even without the added accessories, just as a tablet to take on the road for travel, now that we've got 10 hours of battery life, pseudo charging, micro USB, I mean, mini display port for HDMI, for video out, full USB port for any sort of peripheral that you could possibly need, the new range on the kickstand, and just, again, leveraging those angles. It's fantastic. Let's finally, to just wrap things up, take you over to YouTube. Some of you may be wondering, can this handle 4K video? Of course, this isn't a 4K display, so that's a silly question to ask, but an understandable one in terms of how much can this really deal with. And as I mentioned earlier, I would not recommend running very intensive software on here, but otherwise, when it comes to just about everything else, I mean, Adobe, things of that nature, you're going to be able to deal with it. That's not going to be a problem. I was starting to write the Adobe. And that's what's so impressive about this. You know, you hear Atom and you might wince from years past, but this is legitimately, I would say, one of the best offerings that I've ever seen in the Atom class, and no surprise, it's coming from a Microsoft reference piece of hardware. And that's what's so unique here. So, desktop mode, you can hear the speakers. I went the wrong way, of course. This is the most expensive drone ever offered by Parrot. Go ahead and make that full screen for you. But also easily the best. And I say that at least in my initial experience. And you can hear the speakers are fantastic. I'm going to bring it around. That is the original Shield, which is now dubbed the Shield Portable, and that's because it is an incredible controller for this device. Okay, so you can see the audio quality is fantastic. So, I mean, it's right there with the Surface Pro 3 is what I would say, and it might even be a little bit louder. So ounce for ounce, this does, if it really does match up to the i3 with the 80% performance promise, then it is amazing. I mean, that in itself says it all. That's something I will be putting to the test and eventually giving all of you a true side-by-side comparison. We know they share the same pen experience, so there's no downside other than the smaller screen, less resolution. And at the end of the day, as I keep mentioning, all of the options that the Pro 3 gives with regard to configurations. You don't have that here or that class processor. But otherwise, this is the baby Surface Pro 3, now fittingly the Surface 3. And thankfully, Microsoft listened to consumers and rectified something that really was easy to rectify. There wasn't a good reason to basically ditch this product, meaning the RT lineup. It was a failure, and they acknowledged it and moved on. And we've been blessed with a product that otherwise we would have never seen. So far, really impressed with this. Just to give you an idea of buffering, I'm going to pull up another video. Remember, nowhere near the router. Skip this ad in a second. Hey everybody, Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick unboxing. And with the pen, this would be easier, but I think that's a given. And I am going to go up to the 4K, even though, again, this can't actually display 4K, just to show you what buffering is like and how it handles it. Nowhere near the router. So it is now playing in 4K. Going to go ahead and try to skip ahead. Let's see what buffering is like.
not so much.
So now even in 4K, even though we know it can't actually resolve more than the 1280, it is. And no buffering issues, which to me is really impressive and not something you would necessarily expect. So the Wi-Fi performance, really solid. Bluetooth also no problems for those of you that are curious. So these are the things you need to know. It's really delivering on everything you could possibly want, from media content consumption to doing work as a student, everything. The tablet is still there if you really desire it, but at the end of the day, you're finally at a $500 price point getting something that is a real computer, granted, driven by an Atom, with Windows 8.1 full desktop experience, but in the form factor and price point of the mobile OS world, and that just makes it golden. Of course, I will report back as I spend more time with it. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. And of course, as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.